Hello. In this tutorial I'm going to try my best to explain channels, or what channels are, how they work in Photoshop, and eventually, perhaps not in this tutorial but in other succeeding tutorials, how they can be used. So to begin with, we're looking at a color image in Photoshop, which I've opened up. It's a JPEG, and it's in the RGB mode, which is commonly used when you're working on an image on a computer. In other words, the image that you're looking at is made up of three colors: red, green and blue, mixed proportionally. Now, the first thing to understand is that what Photoshop sees and what we see on the screen in front of us are very different things. What Photoshop sees, in essence, is a sort of composite made up of the three colors we've just mentioned, which are controlled in various ways. And to understand the way they're controlled, you need to look at the channels, what are called the channels here. So I'm going to grab hold of the channels tab here and just drag it out so we can have a look at it. So here it is here. And RGB basically consists of four channels. There is one at the top here called the RGB channel, which shows you, if you like, the complete mix, the three channels mixed together. And then down below we have the individual channels, red, green and blue. And you can see little icons here which are in black and white apparently, or grayscale. And it's important to understand how these work. First of all, Photoshop looks at images in a completely different way to the way we view them, as I said earlier. You might like to think of these three channels rather like the battery compartments in a radio, if you like. Without something plugged into these three channels, the radio doesn't play. And likewise in Photoshop, without certain amounts of information plugged into these channels, you will have no image in front of you. So for example, if I click on the red channel here, you see the image change to a grayscale or a sort of black and white image in front of you. If I click on the green one, you'll notice slight changes in the image, and likewise in the blue one. You can see that those three black and white images, grayscale images, are different from each other. And they're actually doing different jobs in order to create the final RGB composite image at the top. Now, the way Photoshop expresses the values in here, if you like, the information in these channels, is by using a grayscale image, a black and white image. And the pixels in this image, which are either dark or light or shades in between, in other words, going from very, very dark, which you can see sort of down here around her thumb, to very, very light, which you can see in the skin tones here. They're not there by accident. They're basically a visual representation of a job that Photoshop is doing behind the scenes. And Photoshop tells you the job it's doing by representing the image using black and white. So in this red channel which you're looking at the moment, the very lightest pixels that you're looking at are pure white, right? So for example, if I go back to the RGB image, you look for sort of what approximates a pure white image. Let's say something about down here. In the red channel, that also is pretty light, this area down here. That's because all the pixels in that area that I've just selected there are all firing at full strength. They are literally all turned on, if you want to use that expression. The other light areas in the image, for example, I switch between the green image here, or the blue image, and the red image. Can you see the way the skin tones are much, much darker in the blue image and much lighter in the red image? That means that in the red channel here, the light areas represent the areas that are most switched on and allowing most red to come through. You might, another way of thinking about it is little gateways or doorways. The white pixels are letting through the red pigment in the image, and the dark pixels are shutting off the red pixels in the image. So in the red channel, the lightest areas, like her skin tones, are the ones with the most pink in them. If you look at it, you can see that her skin tones here are fairly pink, so you've got a fair amount of red in them. Yeah. When you get to the green channel, you can see that the areas of the coat are quite green. There's a certain amount of green pigment in their skin, so that's quite light. And there's a certain amount of green, believe it or not, in this blue sky as well, mixed into the blue sky. So therefore you have light pixels there. You tend to have darker pixels where there's no green. And similarly in the blue image, you're getting the most darkness because there's less blue in the image. The blue in the image tends to be where the shadows are. So all the areas around here, around her skull for example, around her cap, and in her eyes and so forth, will be darker because there's not much blue in them. There's a certain amount of blue in her eyes because she's got green eyes. We look at it again. So we're getting a mixture here of green and blue in her eyes. But a lot more lightness in the sky in the blue channel because that's where the blue mainly resides in the picture, and little bits of blue and so forth are going on. So the important thing to grasp is that these black and white images are acting, if you like, as little sluice gates. They're letting through the red, green or blue pigment in the picture, and the darker the pixel, the less red that's coming through, or green or blue, in that particular channel, in that battery compartment, if you like, and the lighter, the more pigment in that particular channel is coming through. So that might make things a little bit clearer so far. It will become clearer, I think, if we just do a little exercise. So what I'm going to do is open up a new image here, and I'm going to choose just a simple, basic web image, 640 by 480. You can see the one I'm doing here. And click OK. Now, this is interesting. We have a white, completely white canvas here. And if you look at the channels, we can see that all the channels are also white. Now, why is this? Well, because pure white is composed of the highest, or you say the fullest amount of each color. So pure white consists of full red, full green, and full blue, all turned on at the same time. And likewise, the RGB image here is completely white. So all the pixels here are all fully on. All the red, green, and blue light is hitting the screen in front of our eyes. Now, if I choose a color, let's say, for example, I go over here and open up my color palette. Let's move that to the beginning. You'll notice that whatever color I select, like I just click anywhere on the screen, down here in the color palette, you can see the values for that color. So the green that I've chosen has 0 red in it. It has quite a high amount of green, as you would expect. And the value here can vary between 0 and 255. And it also has a little bit of blue in it. So that shade of green that I selected has a lot of green in it, a little bit of blue, and no red at all. If I, let's start up at the top here, if I type in full red, like 255 in the top value, and I change the green channel here to 0, and the blue channel to 0. I now have, if you like, the purest possible red that I can achieve. It's full strength 255 value red, no green and no blue in it. So I'm going to use that color just to make a little demonstration here. I get the marquee tool here. I'm going to draw a little square on the screen, and I'm just going to fill it with that red color by pressing Option Backspace, Delete, or Alt Delete. And there we are, we've got a red square. Now let's look over here. We have, obviously in our composite channel, a red square. If I look at the blue channel, here down here, we have a black area, a black square. Why? Because there are no blue pixels here. So the area that I've defined here is completely turned off. There are no blue pixels there. Likewise, if I go to the green channel and look there, no green pixels at all. If I switch on the red channel, it disappears completely. Why? Because that is a pure red. So all the pixels there are completely turned on, and therefore it's pure white in essence. Right, let's try it again with a different color. Go back to the RGB here. I'm going to try a blue color this time, so we'll choose blue. I'll type in 255 full strength blue, 0 green and 0 red. Put a 0 in there. So that's the purest possible blue I can achieve. And again, I'm going to just draw a little square here, and I'm going to fill it with my pure blue and see what happens. Now, we get the opposite happening here. If we look at the red channel, we get a black square, no red pixels there, Green, 2 black squares, no green pixels here. Blue, I can still see my red square there, but my blue square has disappeared. It's completely blue, in other words, or completely white in that essence. Just for the sake of completeness, let's do a green one as well. So I'm going to do green 255, 0 red and 0 blue. Purest green I can achieve, and I'll just draw very quickly a little green square here, fill it with green. As you'd expect, green channel now has 2 black squares, red channel has 2 black squares but a different position, and blue channel has 2 black squares with a gap in the middle where the green should have been, okay, where the blue should have been rather. Right, now if I just randomly pick a color, let's pick something that's sort of in the purple area down here, and you can notice here I've got a sort of mixed value, so this is mainly red and mainly blue with a little bit of green in there, and I'll use this to draw a 4th square. Here we go. Fill this with purple. And we look at our channels. Well, we have our usual RGB effect. If you look at the red channel here, we have a grey square. Now that means that there is some red in that, but not enough to turn it completely white. If we look at the green channel, we again have, if you like, almost black, a sort of dark grey. So there was a little bit of green in there, but not much. Blue channel again, grey square. Okay. So hopefully that makes things a little clearer. These black and white channels, these black and white images, represent the amount of blue, red or green pigment that is reaching the our eyes, if you like, reaching the front, the RGB version. Now that's working in RGB. If I switch over, for example, to a grayscale image, let me see if I've got one here. That's not it. There it is. And we look at the channels here, we only have one channel. Well, obviously we've only got one channel because instead of having red, green and blue, this is a grey scale image at all. All that Photoshop needs to worry about are the different shades of light and dark coming through. So there's a lot less information to come through. Finally, if I look at what's called a CMYK image, this is cyan, magenta, yellow and black. This is the mode that you would work in if you wanted to print something out. So these channels represent color, but they also represent the plates that you would use if you were preparing this for print. So you would have different lithograph plates without going into too much detail here. You'd have a yellow inked plate, a magenta inked plate, a cyan inked plate, and a black ink plate. You put them together, and when you print out, you end up with a color image. Right, so that in essence is probably as close as I can get to a clear definition of channels as they are normally used in an image. In the next tutorial I'll try and explain how we can use these and how we can customize these.